The net
That
worth
was
in there,
crazy.
yeah, the net worth in that room was pretty high. I mean, they just run out of money. They just go to the backyard, they just drill a hole and get some oil out and take it to the bank. So, wild.
If those guys got lost out there, oil probably would have fluctuated by $48 a barrel with all the people all the money in that room, man.
Yeah, it was wild. It was wild. Welcome to Rogue Bogues. Back for the basketball series. I've replaced the bobblehead that Pro had working for me over there, back from Bahrain. Pro, way to hold the fort down.
Anytime. And the bobblehead actually paid me for last episode. So
did it really?
Bobblehead 1 cent, Bogues 0. Just so you know. So
I thought you bought the bobblehead. So you're actually in debt, aren't you? I heard you bought it.
No, I've got 3 bobbleheads in my life. I've got you and Dirk from the same year, and the old Oak Hill Academy coach that's one of my best friends in coaching. They had a bobblehead night for him. He's got that Oak Hill Academy of Virginia. I got his bobblehead. So those are the only bobbleheads I've ever had. But yeah, he's back. He's back there. But he unhinged the wallet and said, "Hey, Pro, this is what you're worth." And I know, I really appreciate all you do for the show. But we ain't getting out of this fucking show before you talking about this experience with the FIBA deal.
Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Give me like 2 minutes. I know you and Trent will probably talk about it, but give me like 2 minutes of how the fucking thing was.
Yeah, it was great, man. It was really, really good. Took the wife and kids over to make it kind of a special trip. So it's a long way to fly, but we flew to Dubai, then went to Bahrain a couple of days later. I mean, I got to give credit to FIBA, man. They put on, it was beyond first class with everything that they organized. We land in Bahrain off a commercial flight. They take us to a whole private part of the airport in Bahrain. Like basically we walk off the stairs kind of NBA style into like just a random black van, takes us to a separate disconnected part of the airport. They process everything while we're sitting there having a coffee. Like it was just, everything was first class. Like the hotel was about 40 minutes from the city, which that was the only hard part. But the hotel they put us in was like
Really?
It's set the bar a bit too high for the kids because they're like, is this a hotel? Like, no, it was a 2-bedroom villa, basically in a circling this massive pool with 2 hot tubs. I don't know why you need two at each side of the pool. Like, and that was just ours. And the kids are like, is this a hotel pool? Like, no, that's our room pool. So like, credit to FIBA, like really, really unbelievable experience. Really took care of it. Had my agent come, which was really cool. Peja was there, caught up with him a little bit, Peja Stojakovic. Saw Dirk. I don't know if he sent you the photo, but he told me I'm going to send this to Pro. So, yeah, man, really, really good experience. Friday night was a little rough with the kids because that was a welcome dinner. So they were crashing in the restaurant, and then the following night was the Hall of Fame. So we did a clinic in the morning, did the Hall of Fame, and it was like the way they ran it was nice. It wasn't like a 5-hour ordeal. It was about 2.5 hours from start to finish. It was kind of like, when some of these things start, like before they get to the actual athletes, there's like 15 people that speak, and then you're like, holy shit. Like it was 1 or 2 dignitaries from Bahrain. It was the host, and that was it. Straight into it. It was great. You're like, oh shit. And then of course they're like, Bogues, you're first. So I'm like, great, no pressure. So I had to make sure. And I did fuck one thing up because like we had a rehearsal, and you had to walk up the steps. So make sure you don't fall. Get to the stage, shake hands with one of the sheiks. Stop for a photo. I bombed the photo. Totally forgot. So like shook his hand and just grabbed my trophy and went back to the podium. The dude's like standing there like,
which sheik? There's like 87 of them in that arena that you spoke at.
The net worth
that was
in there,
crazy.
Yeah, the net worth in that room was pretty high. I mean, they just run out of money. They just go to the backyard. They just drill a hole and get some oil out and take it to the bank. So, wild.
If those guys got lost out there, oil probably would have fluctuated by $48 a barrel with all the people all the money in that room, man.
It was wild. It was wild,
crazy.
But it was beautiful. Like it was, and yeah. So then did the speech, got mine done first, and then everyone else has followed. And then there was an event afterwards, which was a quick dinner, and then we took the kids back to the hotel, obviously, and chilled out. And then the next day, Had a chill out. I think we did a city tour, went and saw like their Grand Mosque and a few other things. They have a big fort there as well, the Bahrain Fort on the water from the back in, I think it's a UNESCO heritage site in the world listed. That was cool. And then flew back through Dubai and just made that a little holiday for the kids. So it was a great experience. Really, really thankful for it, and to be inducted along those names, and just seeing some of the names that are on, in the book is pretty wild.
Yeah, besides the fact that you didn't mention Trent or I thought it was a great speech. It was well done, and everything going forward, that was great.
You're not the first person. I got railed by the Kings as well, by Luke Longley railing me on one of our board calls. Hey, you didn't mention us. I'm like, yeah, you guys came when I was declining into my career, but you can't mention everyone. It's kind of hard because you want to thank as much people as you can, but you also don't want to be stuck standing there thanking 500 people. So
they give you a limit, Bogues? They give you here's how many minutes?
Yeah, they said around 3 minutes. Although I think Power went like 13 minutes, but he was a big name in the speech. But it was about 3 minutes. I think mine went for about 4 or 5. So I think they just set it 3 for everyone. Most people were around 4 to 5 minutes. But yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was a shame Coach K couldn't be there, obviously, for obvious reasons. But his was done by video, as most people saw, and good to do. Kind of nerve-wracking leading up a little bit because going up in front of all those people and trying to put together some sort of speech with a bit of humor, and didn't want to make it too kind of boring where you're just like, yeah, thank you, this, oh, it's great, So
yeah,
the Spain thing got some good traction, which was good at the end of that, and even the trophy was amazing. Like the trophy they gave us in this suitcase that we could travel with, and has this plaque, and like just really cool as far as all that goes. So something kind of remember forever. And it's also nice how FIBA kind of invites back all their Hall of Famers for these events. So there was, Dirk was there, like I said, Peja Stojakovic was there. A few of them are on the board for other things. But I mean, Dirk, man, that guy, Powell's probably the all-time craziest schedule I've ever seen. Like that guy is just traveling nonstop. IOC, Olympic Committee, FIBA stuff. It's like he was there with his wife and kids. He's
one guy, Bogues, that I always wanted to try to get in front of, because I love him. I mean, I think he's my favorite, like European player. Him and Dirk are 1A, 1B, but he's like Kobe told me that he's his favorite teammate of all time. He was like he's unreal to watch, man. That's one guy that I always wanted to hook up with and talk to, and because the guy's ridiculous, man. He's really good. But yeah, I heard his schedule's insane.
Like super networker, like just loves, very business orientated, knows everyone and anyone and everyone. So he's all about all that. Like his wife made a joke that he's never home. So I don't know if it was a direct dig at him to give him a hint.
It's a hint.
Yeah. And then Dirk, I was giving him a bit of shit like, man, you don't want to, because I saw so Dirk's in the event. He was there at the event, and then he was flying back that night. And then I saw him at a Lakers game like 2 days later in LA, and I'm like, dude, you don't want to go home, do you? And he's like, nah, I'm just got a busy month or two. So
dude, I was texting him, and then he was there. Like I was texting him almost every day when he was there, and then like all of a sudden some guy goes, hey, are you at the Wings game? I said, why the fuck would I be at the Wings game? WNBA game. He goes, well, Dirk's there courtside. I'm like, the guy was at the FIBA thing like Wings game 12 hours ago.
Exactly. Yeah, he's on it. Some of these boys are moving on. I couldn't do it that much, but all in all, a good experience and something I remember forever. And we'll see. Hopefully, I can get in there as a coach pro. We'll see.
Well, Bogues, one step at a time. Me and Trent are here for you, though. We'll help you every step of the way in the coaching front, and anything that you need from us, we'll definitely.
Maybe we'll get there as podcasters when they have that award.
That'd be great. Last man standing. Last man. Fucking standing.
Once podcasts are phasing out, we'll still be on. No. All right, let's get into the show. So SGA MVP pro. I'll read through the votes real quick before we get into it, but overwhelming winner. He had 913 votes. Second was Jokic with 787. Giannis 470. The rest we don't really need to talk about because they're all under 100. But Tatum, Mitchell, James, how James got some is mind-boggling. Take those people's votes off them completely. Cunningham and Edwards. Right decision, pro?
Yeah. I look, you're going to have the Jokic camp. You're going to have the SGA camp. And look, SGA had a great year. Their team was a juggernaut. You know, he just shows improvement on every step of the way. He dominates scoring. You know, he could score, he could dish it. He mid-range, can actually shoot threes these days. Look, Jokic is special on his own accord. I think if either one got it, you're like, all right. And then, it's funny because ever since I remember with this MVP thing, even in the 80s, you watch these players in the playoffs. Usually the best couple of players are still around for a while. And you're like, you watch Shea in the playoffs, you're like, yeah, I could see how he's the MVP for sure now. I mean, what he's doing is ridiculous. Like getting into his spots, playing heady basketball, could score it, dishes it, I mean, he hurts you in so many ways. I mean, don't get me wrong, Jokic the same way. But I like Shea for the award. I could definitely see, I'm not saying it's Jokic, what do they call it? Fatigue or whatever. I think Shea, look, he's had a breakout year. Their team was clearly the best team in the league, my opinion. So I'm all for it. What do you think, Bogues, on the Shea front?
Look, I think Jokic's numbers were outrageous. I think he definitely should have been closer than it was.
Yeah,
you can't argue it. They're the best team, been the best team in the league. I mean, them in Cleveland, but they've been the best team. They're still standing. I think there is some voter fatigue that does play a part. I think, if it's close, does that sway a close one? Probably, in my opinion, it does. But you can't argue it. Like he's a master at getting to the free throw line. He's hard to guard. He's really janky with the way he moves. He draws you into fouls. He can finish, and he's a big reason why they are where they are. And you circle back to hindsight and thinking, like, imagine him on the Clippers. They didn't do that Paul George trade, right? Like you have him with Kawhi. You probably don't have Harden at that point because you just build something different around SGA. But they gave up on him pretty quickly, and probably you had to do it back then, right? Paul George, all league guy. No one knew SGA would be this level, but there were signs. And my kind of comeback with the Warriors was we played the Clippers in the first round, and he was a big part of why they pushed us in that series. People don't remember that they made us work for that. I think it went 6, I think 5 or 6, but they made us work for it, and he was a big part of it. So you look back at that, and Clippers probably kicking themselves now, but they probably had to do it at the time. But I think it's deserved, and you just it's a close one with Jokic.
Yeah, and look, at the time, everybody likes to play Monday morning quarterback on these trades. I mean, on two ways in this. The Clippers had to do it at the time because, look, at that time, it's the only way you're going to get Kawhi Leonard to get Paul George. So it's the only way. Now, that being said, Sam Presti smelled blood in the water, and he goes, look, I'm going to hold these guys over the Colts for 700 draft picks. I'm getting like Lawrence Frank's next 5 grandkids, their draft picks are gone too. Like Presti's got all of them. And, for good reason. The guy's like, look, we're going to reset this team. We're going to reset this team. We're going to go forward. It's hard to ask about, hey, did you think Shea's going to be this type of player? But with the picks and the young star, you have to do the trade. And Paul George is a hell of a player, still in his prime. And I think that, look, the Clippers, to get him over the hump, they had to do it. And now looking back, you're like, well, they didn't really have much success with Paul George. I get all that. But at the time, it's not a bad trade. And Sam Presti being one of the best GMs in the league scene in the last 20 years. I mean, doing the things that he does. I mean, it's looking back in time, that was a hell of a trade that sent both organizations in different types of directions, to say the least. And, now you're seeing the fruits of that labor during the playoffs now with Oklahoma City, with not only Shea, but the picks that they've been acquiring, the pick swaps they've been acquiring, since that trade happened. That's a pretty tough deal.
It is. Congrats to SGA. All NBA teams also announced first team. You got Giannis, SGA, Jokic, Mitchell, and Tatum. All NBA second team, Brunson, Curry, Edwards, James, and Mobley. Third team, you got Cunningham, Halliburton, Harden, Anthony Towns, and Jalen Williams. Any bigger omissions out of those 15 names, probably, that you can think of that you would have had in, and any of them that you would take out?
Not omissions. My question, Bogues, would be the Donovan Mitchell versus Anthony Edwards. Did you think that Donovan Mitchell and look, Donovan Mitchell in? I'm not like pounding the desk and like, why is he in? I'm just asking you, do you think that would you have done Edwards off from the second team to the first team, maybe even Brunson, second team to first team? Those are the two guys I could say, well, borderline for sure, but I don't really care. It's not really a big deal for me. But in my opinion, I may have probably thought a little bit more for Edwards, Brunson on that team versus Mitchell. But, I mean, look, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think coin flip. I think the record helps with Mitchell, right? So they had the best record in the league. So I think they probably gave him the nod. I don't think there's any huge omissions. I think probably it's interesting Houston didn't get a player in, being such a high seed, and Sengun's probably the one that you look at. That's probably. Would
you put Sengun over Jalen Green in your opinion if you had to do that? If one had to get in, you said nobody from Houston. I would assume.
Okay.
Jalen Green and Sengun would be your 1 and 2 on that. Like, who would you put Sengun over Jalen Green?
Probably,
or Jalen Green?
Sengun's 19, 10, and 5 assists in 76 games, 45 double-doubles. So you'd probably go there. Other, omissions that people are talking about, Jaren Jackson Jr., maybe 22 points, 5 rebounds, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks. Trae Young, no, they sucked. Zubats was the other one that came up, had a fantastic year. Garland, potentially, that would mean Cleveland get 2 in. And Siakam, Adebayo, Booker no, Sabonis no. So I think they pretty much got it right. I think the one is maybe Houston. Who do you omit then?
I think Mobley.
Mobley in?
Mobley out. Yeah, I think you look at the numbers compared to Sengun. I don't know if Mobley's all NBA second team.
Yeah, I think all defensive, which is in. That's a fair one. Mobley's probably the one that
top 10 in the league.
Yeah, not top 10 in the league. But I think they're probably just because of their record, they wanted to win there. Did anyone else get 2? Boston didn't. No one else got 2 players. So
I think OKC
got 2.
Had Jalen Williams on the third team.
SGA.
Yeah.
So I mean the 2 number 1 seeds get 2 players.
Knicks as well with Cat and Brunson.
That's right. Yeah, so that's interesting in itself. But yeah, I mean it's hard. I mean Sengun's probably the one that I would put in. I just think Houston had a great season, even though they got bounced pretty quickly. They were pretty good for most of the season. That's probably the one omission there. All defensive teams. First team, you got Dyson, Dort, Green, Mobley, and who's the other one there from Houston? Amen Thompson. So that's all pretty spot on, in my opinion. With those ones, your second team, you got Kamara, Gobert, Jackson Jr., Williams again from OKC, and Zubats. So they're all pretty up there. Don't really see any huge omissions there if I'm thinking about it, Pro.
No, not at all, Bogues. I mean, I think those 5 are as elite defensively as you're going to find. I mean, some people would argue Zubac, Jackson Jr. should get, a little more thought on the first team, but it's one of those things we always talk about. Okay, that's great. You're going to put them on there, but who are you taking off?
Exactly.
Who's your, Draymond Green? Draymond Green's a hell of a defender. Amen Thompson, hell of a defender. And one of the most improved players I've seen this year. And, Lou Dort, Daniels, Mobley, I mean, those guys are elite defensively. So, I'm not, again, pounding the desk getting into this stuff.
I don't know too much about Kamara because I haven't seen many Blazers games, but it's interesting to see a guy make the all defensive team that was on a team that sucked, right? So he must be very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a young player. They've got a nice little core of some young good players there, and Kamara's good. Klington, Donovan Klingen's good too, a center for them who could play defense. But he's good. He's an up and comer. Nothing great, but he plays hard. He's been steadily getting better the last couple of seasons, but nothing great there. But good player, solid defender. But yeah, again, no one I would put on there and take off. I think it's a pretty solid list.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Mm-hmm. Nuggets have officially named Adelman as coach, Pro. Did you see terms anyway? I didn't see any real terms as far as.
I haven't.
It just said they're keeping him for next season. He was on his assistant coaching contract, I assume. So I don't know if they're still negotiating that or how long.
Oh no, yeah, they'll rip it up. They'll probably rip it up. If I had to guess, the way they operate plus the circumstances, it's probably like a 3-year deal. 2+1, maybe a 4-year deal. 3+1. They probably save a little money doing it, and obviously it's his first gig, and I'm sure he's not trying to hold them over the coals. And they know how good of a job he did during the playoffs, but I haven't heard anything about terms in the deal or anything, but they'll rip his deal up and figure something out, obviously, going forward. I would say probably 4 years since it's his first gig, but again, I have no idea. I haven't heard anything like that.
And he's been in the league. He's been in the league a long time right now.
Long time.
He worked for his dad, right?
I think at the end of his dad's career, that's where he sort of started. Great guy. I worked Tim Gergerich's camp with him in Vegas. Always a gentleman, doesn't have a lot to say as far as like, not one of those guys that wears you the fuck out. Good guy, knowledgeable. I really like being around him, the small time I was around the guy. But like we were talking with Trent last week, I'm glad he got it. It was a home run move for them. I think it's the only move they should have made. I thought he did really well in the playoffs. I think he did well as, you saw a couple blow-ups on the bench where Jokic was going off and things like that. He kept his cool, really stepped, just sort of, just held everything in place and did really well, and he got better as the playoffs went on. I think it's a solid pick for them. I think, that core's together. I thought it was a home run move for them.
Yeah, I like it. It just flows nicely. They seem to respond a little bit with him at the helm, and now he gets an off season to build. I mean, Denver's just got to find some depth. I mean, that's be all and end all for them is just finding a little bit of depth on that bench. The cap obviously hurt them a little bit, losing Brown Jr., losing KCP and Jeff Green, who were all vital pieces of that championship. Washing them, not really replacing them with much, and playing 6-7 deep, as we can see now with what the Knicks are going through and a few other teams. You got to have a little bit of depth into that bench over the course of a long playoffs. But we'll see how Denver rebuild. All right, let's get into the playoffs. We've got a game going on right now. We'll talk about that one shortly. But Minnesota and OKC, which was looking like it's going to be a wash of a series. 114-88 in game one. OKC just walk right over him. 118-103 in game two, which was similar. It ended up being a bit more of a respective score towards the end. Most people, saw Paul Pierce or a few other people on ESPN saying this series is over, put a fork in it. And then Minnesota come out and absolutely wallop OKC 143-101. It's the biggest loss in OKC franchise history. I don't know if that includes Seattle and, as part of their franchise history. I'd have to look at that, but that's a stat that I saw. Does Minnesota have a chance, Pro? Can they reel this back, do you think? Because it looked like they were dead in the water the first two games. And OKC have one of these games a series, it seems. We saw it in Memphis, and they came back and won that game, but they were down by, I think, 30 at one point in that game. They'll have those lulls where they're just in cruise control and get absolutely pummeled, and then they find some fight. But does Minnesota have a chance to get back to 2-2 and even salvage a possible win in this series?
I really do think they have a chance, Bogues, only because it has to be your mentality of how you're going to go against them, against OKC. You can't just jack up threes against OKC and just play passively defensively. You got to hedge up on them. You got to attack them offensively, get to the basket. Not only get to the basket, but then, move the ball, get good shots. But you got to attack those bigs, especially Holmgren. You got to attack them physically. I think when you just jack up threes and, hope you're going to, drop bombs from 30,000 feet instead of having like foot soldiers on the ground and trying to do the dirty work, you're not going to beat those guys. You can't have like Randall, Naz Reid. You can't have those guys is jacking up shots. You got to, even Edwards, you got to attack the rim. You got to attack the rim first, open up threes because everyone's sort of getting into you. But you got to be physical. The first two games, they came out playing okay the first game. Second game, they got walloped. And then, last night, they came out the way you have to come out. You try to punch them in the face and don't stop. That's how playoff basketball has to be. You can't just sit back and launch threes and play passively defensively. You'll have to attack. You have to get to the basket. You have to be physical and knock them on their ass a little bit. That's the only way. Now, but you're gonna have to win in OKC to do that. You win your next one if you win your next one at home, but you always got to go back to OKC and hit them there. And you have to have the same mentality on the road than you do at home, and you can't settle. And that's the thing. I thought Rudy Gobert was terrible in the first couple of games. I thought he was much better last night. Look, again, I always go back to it. The guy's been in the league like 12 years. He's got not one thing to do offensively but dunk the ball, which is interesting. Like that, he's got to be better. He's got to be physical. He's got to have that presence, obviously, defensively. But offensively, he's got to attack on those rolls. You got to attack on those lobs. You got to really feel your presence. He's not a great offensive player, but he could be a lot better. I just think aggressiveness, he's got to be a little more aggressive. But I do think they have a chance, Bogues, for sure.
Yeah, I think just OKC will have a lull or two every series. I don't know. Minnesota I want this to be a deep series because I don't think the other ones are going to be the way things are looking. But Randall's the key for them. I think when he comes out, Edwards is going to be Edwards. He's going to, he'll have nights where he shoots poorly, but he's going to be aggressive. He's going to try to take it. Randall's got to be aggressive like he was the last two series. I think he was really good in this playoffs up until game 1 and 2. He kind of was not great in those games, and he's that secondary scorer. They need him. They need more for him. Naz Reid hasn't been great this series. What's interesting is the Mike Conley minutes have been really, really important for Minnesota. When he's out on the floor, they've been in the team plus minus has been very favorable towards Minnesota. Now it's little bit skewed in this series because of the big blowout, but OKC's depth and length in multiple positions is just so well constructed that, they can just cause issues. And the issue for Minnesota this series has been turnovers. I mean, they're OKC's averaging 9 steals a game to Minnesota's 4 in this series. And that's enough to win you a game just off its own bat. If you turn the ball over 5-6 times more than the other team, even at 50% field goal percentage, that's giving you roughly 8 or 9 points, if you include a 3 or 2 a night that you're giving up just from the start of the game, right? Then you factor in the rebound count and a few other things. But, yeah, it's been interesting to see a few little chess moves with some small lineups from Minnesota. OKC's had Holmgren at the 5 at times having to adapt. So SGA leading this series, 27 points a night. He's only shooting 27% from 3, and now it's easier said than done to make him shoot threes because he's not silly. SGA is one of those unique players where you almost want to play off him and dare him to shoot the 3, but then what SGA does, he takes that space up and goes right at you and then spins and he's so herky-jerky in the paint. So there's an argument to say he's not a great shooter from 3, but you still want to be up and keep contact with him because you don't want to let him get ahead of steam and Euro and do all those fun. It's kind of the Giannis thing as well, right? Like, a lot of teams pack the paint on those guys because they can't shoot it, but then they're taking up that space and then they're coming downhill on you. It's so tough to kind of guess which way they're going to Euro you. So he's been huge. Jalen Williams with 19 a game and Holmgren with 15 a night. The rest of OKC are in single digits, and then Minnesota more balanced scoring. Now these stats I think a little bit strange just because of the blowout, but Anthony Edwards with 26 a night, Randall with just under 20, McDaniels with 13, Alexander Walker with 12, and Leonard Miller played 1 game. Now, this wasn't a blowout, but maybe he's found some minutes. He scored 11 in the last game. But Naz Reid's the other one that I think needs to be big for him, and if they've got any chance, they just got to find, like every playoff series, you got to find, is it a DiVincenzo, is it a Reid, someone that can give you a 20 out of nowhere, and you'll win game 4. But it will be interesting to see now that OKC have been punched. They're a little bit threatened how they come back in game 4.
Yeah, those guys have had just a togetherness that, they've gotten punched in the face before, not too many times this season, obviously, but, they don't get too high and too low. They just figure things out. And I think that's part of the maturity process. Everyone, been talking about the last few months about how inexperienced they are, how young they are, waiting for them to falter. And I understand that mentality and thinking, but I think the way you get better, especially how good they are, you get better by getting punched in the face and figuring things out for the next game. That's what's so good about the playoffs. It's game by game. Every game is sort of subset of itself, and you gotta game plan for the next game. You gotta make your adjustments, make your changes, and that's all they have to do. Look, they're gonna play up on you a little bit more defensively. They're gonna be handsy. They're gonna be a little more physical. So you're gonna have to, again, you gotta take that hit, take the bump. You gotta continue to move the ball. You gotta be good with the ball. You can't let up offensive rebounds. You got to hunt great shots, and you just got to be tough. They played well all year. They're not going to forget how to win. And I understand the playoffs are a different beast, no doubt about that. But I mean, it's just about, you have to just continue to be tough. You got to have to play with energy, play with fight, and have that disposition and attitude of, look, we're not going to let down. We're just going to keep this thing going. Our game's a little bit weird these days with these 40-point blowouts. You see them all the time, 40, 45. Look, you're going to get punched, and you're going to get punched hard. And, back in the day, you never saw this happen. The only teams that were losing by 45 are like the Clippers back in like 1987 when they were terrible. But like, you don't see it but you see it a lot today. It's just, I don't know what it is. I don't know what you could track it back to. But you just got to get back on the horse. For Minnesota, they got to continue to, to find ways to play with energy, continue to be physical. But to me, you're not going to do that. You're not going to really have a chance in the series unless you headhunt and attack those bigs, Hardenstein, Holmgren, and even try to get SGA in a little early foul trouble. That's the only way you have a chance. This ain't going to be jacking up 45 threes and figuring things out. It's got to be toughness, and you got to continue to attack. I think Oklahoma City, like you said, I think they're going to have some lulls here and there, but you figure things out. You figure it over the day, your day break, and then you go right back into it the next one. And I think it's a good series, though. I think it's going to be, hopefully it can continue to be competitive. I don't see Oklahoma City really losing this series. I just think that home court advantage is going to be huge, and they are a really good team. But it's been fun to watch, man. The role players, Caruso playing D, Wiggins off the bench. Minnesota has guys that scrap. Terrence Shannon, a rookie out of Illinois, had a great game last game. I think he had like 11 or 13 points. He played with energy. And that just goes to show you, when you're a young player and you haven't played for a while, you gotta always be ready. And when you get in there, you gotta punch somebody in the face. You cannot be passive in this environment at all.
Yeah, I agree. And you might find a role from a blowout game. You play the last 6 minutes and you make some shots, even though your team's down 40 or up 40, and then coach is like, shit, like he was ready to go. I might give him a chance earlier in the next game. And we see that all the time. I think the Mavs championship run from a couple of, decade odd ago, I think Corey Brewer got thrown in there in a random game and won him a game off his own bat, right? And then didn't play again the rest of the series. Like, you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah.
Well, don't forget, JJ Barea was hatched from that. JJ Barea was the big X factor in them beating the Lakers and going on in that playoffs, inserting him in the lineup with him and Jason Kidd at the same time. And that was a huge X factor for them that they found a lot of success with and just rode that. So you never know. You could carve yourself out a role and carve yourself out a career. The little guy, Barea, shoot, he probably made an extra $30-35 million off that series, going forward with contracts and just playing time and edging a role, like you said. And this is where the playoffs are fun, watching those guys that are just sort of, just thrown in the mix and seeing if they could perform or not.
100%. Is the little fella still in Dallas? You still see him around, JJ?
Nah, he's mostly in Puerto Rico. He was coaching. I think he just got let go. He's been coaching the Puerto Rican League the last couple of years. Don't see him in Dallas. I know he was working for the team a few years back
he was with
as
Cubes,
like an
right?
ambassador. Yeah, I don't think he does anymore, but I don't know. But I hear from him from time to time. He'll call me, FaceTime me, and talk some shit. But no, I haven't heard from the little fella.
Ultimate shit talker through.
Oh, without doubt, the best.
One of the best. All right, Indiana, New York, going on live right now during our pod. So it's Indiana 60-46, New York, start of the third quarter. But let's get into this series. I mean, this is probably the craziest conference finals game I've ever seen, game one. The comeback, we've seen some comebacks. We've seen the T-Mac game in a regular season against San Antonio off one guy doing it. We've seen other comebacks. But the Knicks led by 14 with under 3 minutes left in regulation. And you could just see, Naismith was hitting threes, and you thought, it's still over. I think it was a 7 or 8 points with under a minute left, and the Knicks, I don't think, as much as they capitulated, they did, but also Indiana made some tough shots, man. You look at the shots that Naismith was hitting were tough, were really, really tough. They lost him in transition a few times, and then obviously the Halliburton shot just will go down in history, especially considering he gives the choke sign and doesn't realize it's going to overtime, which was hilarious in itself. You kind of like, most people would have saw that and gone, oh shit, you've jinxed the overtime now. They still pull it out 138 to 135 pro. I mean, it's got to be one of the best conference finals finishes we've seen in NBA history.
I remember where I was. I was at Stonehill College at an AAU tournament when Reggie Miller, we were watching the game on this this regular size TV in between games and watching that. And you're just amazed at what happened through that comeback. Same comeback in college.
Knicks Pacers as well.
Knicks Indiana. Yeah, that was Reggie Miller's comeback in New York, where he made the choke sign when he was making the shot, right? So I remember where I was with that, and it was amazing. It was amazing. And look, these Indiana Pacers, John Calipari coached a college team at University of Massachusetts back in the 90s, and they had a motto, and they were just these tough guys. Marcus Camby was young, he was like a freshman. They had this motto called "Refuse to Lose." And they just played hard for 40 minutes a night, and they never gave up, and they just fought. And that is the sentiment of this team, the Indiana Pacers. Look, said it a million times. No superstar on the team. They have all these players that just come at you. They just come at you. They fight. They play with energy. They could all shoot. But they don't really do anything besides maybe Halliburton. They don't really go into this ISO package or anything like that. They just play hard. They move the ball and they attack you. They're not great defensively, but what they do is they play 94 feet and they play hard. And their starters play extremely tough. Their guys coming off the bench like McConnell, Mathurin, Toppin, Shepard, those guys just attack you. They play hard. They make shots, and they're not afraid. And look, there was so much talk about New York choking, and I get all that. It was just one of those things where in Carlisle being around him, look, I've said it a million times of how I feel about him and how he feels about me. I'm going to separate that. As far as his disposition every day, it's not for everybody. Meaning he never really he's always on edge about staying in the moment and staying this fight. And you got to fight for 82 games. Every game, bringing up the standings after the third game of who's higher than the other, and you're like, what are we doing? But it is true. You need that disposition all the time, especially with a team like that. I think he found his perfect team. I think having guys that fight, young guys that is just thrown in there, no true superstar, ball doesn't really stop, and he gets to coach all these guys and they just go hard for him. And I think that's his perfect environment, because the guy's one of the smartest offensive coaches I've ever met. And I think you see that the way they play. They're hunting mismatches. They're hunting that mismatch in a switch and they're just putting their head down and attacking. And it's been fun to watch. It's different. Obviously, people are expecting a big market team to make the finals. You're not going to see that. It's just an interesting environment. It's one of those things where, look, if you come in like the Knicks, I don't think the Knicks came in cocky, Bogues. I just think that Indiana attacked them. They didn't stop, and they never stopped. For 48 minutes, they never stopped. And it's an interesting phenomenon. I give them all the credit in the world. Though those guys are a hell of an effort for sure.
Yeah, and just the amount of transition baskets they get. Trent and I were talking about it before. Even in the Cleveland series, you would see, Cleveland score and they've already got the ball up the floor and getting a layup in playoff games. They got one against Cleveland that was like a vital possession in the last 3 minutes of a game. Cleveland score, they inbound it, one pass up the sideline, Siakam gets a layup or a dunk, and they've done that in this series too with New York. They just run straight back at you. They don't. If you make a tough shot or a big three, they don't sit there and point fingers or mope or cry about the shot that you just made. They're running it straight back at you. And I agree. They're free flowing. They move the ball. There's no real, Halliburton's obviously the head of the beast. Siakam, but it's by, it's by community, right? Like you even look at their stats compared to the Knicks so far in 2 games. Siakam's leading with 28, Halliburton with 22, Naismith with 21, Turner with 15, Nembhard with 14, McConnell with 10, and then you look at the Knicks, and I think they've only got 3 guys or 4 guys that are double digits. You've got Brunson almost 40, Towns 27, Bridges 18, Anunoby with 16, and then it's a massive fall off. So it's a balance issue, and it just seems like even in this game 3, just watching it in the background, everything that New York gets to score is a grind. It's Brunson making a tough shot. It's Towns going one-on-one. You look at Indiana, and it looks like at times there's no defense out there. It just seems like they just move the ball left to right. Oh, that's not open. Let's go this way. And I think Rick Carlisle loved Thibs, but I think he's outcoached Thibs for most of this series. The age-old debate with the Knicks and their depth and Thibs not going deep. Now he's thrown in guys that haven't even played a minute. In Delon Wright played tonight. A few other guys. He put Shamet in randomly, who hasn't played for God knows since the last time he touched the court. He's trying to find something, but he should have tried to find that earlier in the playoffs. Detroit series, this series, Trent and I were also talking about it. It seems like, most teams will have they'll be a bit more loose with how deep they go early in the playoffs. Round 1, round 2, and then conference finals, you tighten up a little bit, right? That's how most teams do it. New York do it the other way around. New York are like, 7-man rotation, first round, second round, and they get injuries and fatigue, and it's like, all right, shit, Shamet, get out there. I know you haven't played for 3 months, but give us what you got. It's contrary to like how most other teams do it, right, bro? And that's been a problem for Thibs. It can't always be the roster. At times you got to instill that confidence in players early in a playoff run with mind of like, I might need this guy in a conference finals rather than just not playing him and then just throwing him out there.
Yeah, it is. Look, that's been his way. Short rotations, big minutes. Look, the big minute thing to me, last year they got a little unlucky with the injury stuff. This year they were not perfect health, but they were in really good health throughout the year. But you're right. Like when you need to find different rotations or different ways to go, especially if you hit a big roadblock in the playoffs, and having guys that's played a little bit for sure. Landry Shamet's a hell of a shooter, a hell of a player. But when you don't play him for a while and then you throw him in, it's really tough to get that rhythm going for sure, because you're gonna have to get that rust out of you a little bit. And when you're sitting there for a while, I totally agree. And I think that, look, Indiana being a small market team, Bogues, they don't spend a ton of money. I think that they're a model of how you run your organization as far as finding guys that are a little under sort of recruited or under evaluated, and getting those guys that have fight in them and that will stay ready and just keep attacking, that can make shots, that are over themselves, that could play into a role. Yeah, they've been fun to watch. They really, it's funny, Bogues, because look, they win. If New York wins game 1, this is a completely different series.
100%.
I think
100%.
When you lose a game like they lost, sometimes you just I think you doubt yourself. You have that fake confidence, of course, but you doubt yourself. Can we win? What the hell just happened? And you just lose that. You lose that swagger about yourself and that confidence. And that's what Indiana did. And Indiana came back twice in that Cleveland series on games they should have never won. This is not new to them. And those guys just keep fighting. It seems like they know who they are. And it doesn't matter if it's going to be them, Oklahoma City, Minnesota. They'll just continue to play this way. Now, will they have success against those teams? That we'll see about that when they play. But that's how you play it. Like you said, New York, everything's tough. Everything's hard. And if they could still win this game and go on and maybe win the series, I doubt it. But everything's hard. Karl Anthony Towns, I told you before we started, he either looks like Karl Malone or Irvin Johnson from the Seattle Supersonics back in the 90s. But he's had a great series scoring, but sometimes he just makes it really difficult. In some, Bridges plays well at sometimes, makes it difficult on himself sometimes. And then you've got Mitchell Robinson, who's played a great series, rebounding the ball, activity, defense. But again, I've been with Rick in Dallas, and when guys can't make free throws, they just wrap you up as much as possible, and then they force them to sit Robinson because he can't make free throws. So it just seems like everything that New York tries, like they already have the answer. It's like Back to the Future, where he goes back in time, back in the future to get that sports catalog of who won the games and betting on the games to try to be a millionaire. Like they know everything that New York's going to throw at him. And because I've seen those books that Carlisle has for the playoffs. Mike Weiner used to make them in Dallas. They're like this thick. They're like 2 dictionaries. They know every play. They go over everything, pound film. But it's all that great preparation. But it's just staying ready and punching in the face. It doesn't matter if they were playing the 86 Celtics, the 90s Bulls. They're going to be ready for it. And, man, it's been a hell of a series.
Yeah, New York's going to have to pull out of Indiana if they got any chance at 70-57 as we talk with 6 minutes left.
Every comeback in the next 30 years is going to be like, yep, they pulled in Indiana.
Yep.
I mean, what they've done in the playoffs is great.
Sensational.
Ridiculous.
Multiple times, too, like you said, as Siakam gets a transition dunk. The other interesting thing about Indiana for how much they move the ball and how high tempo they play offensively, they're averaging 8.5 turnovers in this series. Like they just don't turn the ball over, which I know Halliburton's an elite point guard, but a lot of times it's not in his hands. They move the ball left to right, and Rick's really instilled with them, take a bad contested three in transition rather than turn the ball over. Take a bad contested shot. At least we've got a chance for an O board, and they just don't turn it over. New York's turning it over at a 14, which isn't a hugely bad number, right?
But they take advantage, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're running it straight back at you. As Naismith gets injured with an ankle, so that could change some things here. We'll see. Look, I think it's going to be very hard for New York to come back from here. I mean, we're sitting here as we have the advantage of knowing the score in this game, and it's looking like New York's going to not get this one and 3-0 down, you can put a cork in it.
Well, no team has ever come back in a conference final series after losing the first 2 home games as the top seed. Ever.
Yeah. So and look, theoretically, Indiana only need one of these next 2. You think that they'd still be okay, but I think they'll get this one today, judging by the score. But I hope New York finds something and they can make this a series, but it just doesn't look likely, bro.
Yeah, I don't think so either, Bogues. Good for Indiana, though, man. But they take advantage of it. It's just a different team. No one expected them. We expected them to be like a top 5 seed or so. But, I mean, those guys are just giant killers. They've been playing well. I don't usually blow teams, but those guys have been doing fucking really well with, I got to give them all the credit in the world, man. They were fun to watch. And, they've been throughout the whole series. You got to give them a lot of credit for that. So,
Like I picked New York. I picked New York to win this series, like most people, but I didn't have the cajones to pick Indiana. But I was speaking with a friend of mine, and I said, I think it's going to go 6. And I think Indiana's that strange team that could get so hot and just put a bunch of points on. They could steal a game or 2 and make this a series. I didn't have the cajones. I can't say I had the cajones to pick them. I just couldn't. I just thought, New York has the length, the size. They had a good mix of all that coming in, but Indiana's been exactly that. They're look at this. They're just running the ball. They're just running the ball at you constantly, and you're kind of on the back foot all game.
Bogues, you didn't have one of those sheiks give you 3 bags of rubies and diamonds to put on the game when you went back to Australia?
No, I didn't. I just had a villa that was well paid for, which was very, very nice.
Whew.
Which is a close second, but we'll move on from that. We'll see how this game goes. Talk about it next week. All right, useful or useless, pro. There's only 2 active players in the NBA that have 9 all defensive selections. Who are they, pro?
2 active players. Well, I think the first one's gonna have to be Draymond Green, right?
Yes. Ding.
Okay, that's 1. Rudy Gobert?
No.
Oh,
He didn't make a team this season.
He didn't make a team this season. Obviously, Michael Conley?
Nope. Point guard.
What do you got, both?
Chris Paul.
Point guard. Oh, Chris Paul.
Chris Paul, yeah.
Got it.
They're only 2 with 9. All defensive selections. Useful or useless?
Oh, it's useful, man. It's useful. I mean, those two guys are big time defenders, man. And over a course of your career, that's pretty special. 9 times all defensive, either first or second team.
Agree.
I say it's useful.
Elite. That's elite to get to double digits for either of them. I don't think Chris will get there because I think Victor's going to take all the defensive selections from San Antonio. Draymond still has a chance. All right, the Indiana Pacers are 18-1 and about to be 19-1 when Tyrese Halliburton has 25-plus points in this season, including the playoffs.
Say that one more time, Bogues.
So the Indiana Pacers are 18-1.
18-1.
In the playoffs and regular season when Tyrese Halliburton scores more than 25.
Wow. That's useful. Yeah. That's pretty elite stat, by the way. 18-1 with 25. Yeah. Definitely. I would say useful.
Yeah, I say useful as well. Obviously when he's scoring and he had some kind of lulls throughout the regular season compared to last season.
Mm-hmm.
Last season he was top 5, top 10 MVP voting. This season he had some cold shooting streaks. But yeah, when he scores the ball and he's aggressive, they're very, very good. So useful on that one. All right, pro. All NBA teams. There's one player out of all three All NBA teams that has a negative plus minus on the season, pro. Who is that?
Give me a second, Bogues. I don't have that information in front of me, but I'm gonna have to say first three teams negative. Giannis. No. Fuck that. That's stupid.
That's very stupid.
Yeah, that's dumb. No, it's not. Bogues, I have no idea. Who the hell is it? I mean, you got Cade Cunningham, Tyrese Halliburton, James Harden, Towns, and Jalen Williams. None of those fucking guys got a minus. Oh, LeBron James.
It is LeBron James. LeBron James. And it's not the first time this has happened, pro. This has happened a few times. He's a minus 54 on the season. Everyone else is better than, the lowest is Brunson with a plus 146, and the highest is Shea at a plus 918, pro. So useful or useless?
That's useful for sure. Useful for sure.
I have to check.
Bogues, Jokic didn't lead the league. I thought he would have led it. No, he's usually good in that plus minus stuff.
He was close. Jokic was 594. He had a dip. So Shea led it. Shea's 918. I'm not sure if he led it, but I'd assume so. He was at 918. No one was within 300 of him. The next best is Jokic with 594, which is wild.
Interesting.
Which then leads me to check. Let's have a look what LeBron's numbers were. 25, 8, and 8. So decent numbers. Would have been interesting if Luka was healthy, because then it's like, who do you put in from the Lakers? You can't put both of them in. But we all know, LeBron needs to be in there. One of the faces of the league. But yeah, interesting stat nonetheless that he's the only guy with a negative in the plus minus ranks.
Yeah, if LeBron didn't get in there, Brian Windhorst. Oh, by the way, so I go to my spot to grab something to eat the other day, like opening the opening of the Oklahoma City series, and I'm sitting like back to the TV eating, and I'm hearing this voice. I'm like, who's this new female person covering the game for the ESPN? And I look up, and it's fucking Brian Windhorst, which automatically, I'm a huge Seinfeld guy, automatically he sounds like the high talker.
Oh, yeah.
When they were talking, this is Dan. Dude, Windhorst for sure. I'm like, who is she? I look up, it's fucking Windhorst. I'm like, holy shit. I don't really listen to Windhorst talk a lot. And I'm like, automatically, this is Dan from Seinfeld, man.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Would you see him get heckled in the street as well?
Oh, the worst.
That was bad.
Hey, New York.
That was bad.
Them throwing the Yeah, that was bad. But how about them throwing the garbage? I mean, it's just
whatever. On that random fan. That was bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem about going to games, Bogues. You can't even wear. First of all, I would never wear a jersey. No. I would never wear anything of any team, even if I worked for the team. I mean, just because people are fucking insane. But yeah, Windhorst getting fucking heckled, man. You don't do that shit.
I'm the same. I even tell kind of a family not to wear that stuff, just because you just don't know.
Too many
morons, if you're at a home game, like you just don't know, man. Like there's so many idiots out there, and it only takes it's just unfortunate reality of the world you live in. If I was there, no problem. Like but I don't want my wife and kids get into that. They'll wear them at home games. Don't get me wrong, but even sometimes you're like, oh yeah, just if to you know, you're sitting near some strange road fan and there's a bit of banter. Like the crazy thing is they'll go after kids. That's what's crazy. Like, you know, the adult thing's one thing, but like they'll go after kids, like talk shit to kids and teenagers and shit about, you know, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
Bogues, did I ever tell you my New York Yankees story?
Probably, but you can tell us again.
Thanks. It's not a movie reference, but so me and Danny Ainge go. This is one of my first years in Boston.
Yeah, you have told this story. You have told this story. Just tell it again.
We go to New York Yankees. I'm seeing girls getting like beers poured on their face, you know, on their head. Like, I'm like, where the fuck are we? I thought I was in Vietnam or something. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, no one was safe. Like, I'm seeing people get slapped, punched. I'm like, dude, come on. You know, that's fucking.
Well, baseball's a bad one because it's a big drinking sport, right? So, like, you need to be slamming beers to fucking get through the bottom of a baseball game, right? So you always see a lot of those fights there. Like, there's a lot of fights in the baseball just start rattling each other.
Dude, I'm getting threatened for like 8.5 innings. Fucking, I'm up there in the bleachers. Danny Ainge is like the 7th row with the ownership of the whole Red Sox, you know, guarded by SEAL Team 6. I'm like, this fucking guy. I'm getting heckled. I got a Jordan sweatsuit on, 9X, and I just want to fucking sit there and chill. And this fucking guy threatened me for like 8.5 fucking innings, and I can't beat up a 2-year-old. So what am I gonna do? So I got the fuck out of there. Is what I fucking got. You know, at the last outfit, man, rough.
Nah, it's brutal, especially when alcohol's involved. Fact or fake news? What do you got?
Bogues, so you're seeing Adam in interim coach gets hired. Memphis interim coach gets hired. Brian Keefe, I believe interim coach, got hired 2 years ago and then got hired by Washington. Mm-hmm. Are you going to are teams, fact or fake news, teams are going to continue this trend at the end of the year, firing their coach, interim coach does a decent job and then sticks at the interim coach versus hiring somebody new? Fact or fake news? Now, I know it's situational. I know
it's situational. It depends what names are out there, pro. So, like, I think timing, as we've discussed, timing is just for free agency, timing for trades, timing for contracts, timing for coaches. Timing is everything in the NBA, the NBL, professional sports. It's timing. Right place, right time. Mm-hmm. Like, you could get a max contract this season, but next season there might not be cap space. You get an injury and then you're getting half of that. You know, that's just the way it works. But I think it's depending on who's out there. What I like about hiring interims is teams that do it. They know what the warts are with that guy. Mm-hmm. They know what the pros are. They know what the cons are. They know what he's like on a daily basis. There's an advantage in seeing that in the pressure cooker, right? Like, you know, there's so many coaches that can interview like the best of them. But, you know, I think there's some out there right now that continue to get big time jobs that just cannot get over the line that I would assume just interview is 10 out of 10. But when you actually see it on a daily basis, how do they interact? What are their moods like? What are they like on a road trip that the plane's delayed, no one's getting sleep, and we've lost 2 in a row? Like, you've seen that now with Adelman in a small sample size in the biggest pressure cooker in the playoffs, and they've liked what they've saw. So I think fact from that where teams will prefer to keep someone in-house for the most part. Now, the only flip side of that is, if I'm arguing against myself, is if there is a coach that probably had some issues, there will be teams that will just unfortunately wash that whole coaching department if something has arisen where it's toxic and they're like, we've got to get rid of this coach. Generally, you'll move on everyone and collateral damage happens, right? Or a player says, I want him gone, don't want anything to do with him, and then they move off everyone. But you know, most organizations try to be patient with that and say, we've got a great assistant sitting here who's going to be coach one day. We saw it with the Spurs as well, Pop moving on now. You always want to try to have, and I think that smart organizations do that. You try to have an assistant there that one day can take over if things go astray, or even if that coach retires, and Spurs did a good job of that. And I think we'll see more and more of it. Fact.
I'm going to say that more teams like south of 10, so 11 to 15, unless you're like Philly that just had a bunch of injuries and stuff. But I'm going to say that a lot of these teams 11 to 15, that when they fire their coach and they have an interim coach, are going to go with the interim, like a new blood, like a new blood versus the guy just a retread. Now, if you're, say, I don't know, if you're I don't want to name a name or a team, but like if you're just a high market team that ends up just like going say, hey, we're just firing the coach, right? Then I could say, all right, if you're a playoff contender and you're decent, I would say, okay, they'll go with the retread. But I do think that these lower teams, say like a Charlotte or Washington or a Brooklyn or Toronto, if they ever made a change, that's just the Eastern Conference. If they just made a change like that, and like you see some of these Western Conference teams that aren't very good, like, and then they make a change like before the end of the season, I would say that they're more in they have a better chance. Like if I'm the West, like a New Orleans,
Portland,
like a New Orleans, Portland, Sacramento, something like that. They will go with the new blood because A, they're cheaper. B, they say, hey, what do we have to lose right now? We've got all these young players. We're probably not going to win. We're going to try to reshape this thing. We're going to go with the new blood versus the old adage. All right, we'll go after the guy who's 65 years old or 59 years old that's coached 19 teams. Like we're going to go with that guy. Like if I'm a young team, I'm probably going with the interim coach because it doesn't really matter. It does matter. It does, but it doesn't because look, the guy's probably been around for a little bit. He's done his homework, and you got to come from with some of these guys got to come from something, right? They just don't fall out of the sky. Like they gotta get one opportunity. The problem is it's hard to move on to a second opportunity because usually you're gonna be losing, but I think these teams are going to think out of the box a little bit. It's sort of like a 2-way contract or a 10-day. Like they're going to like, you know what, let's give this guy a chance, see what he can do. If he does something, we'll just keep rolling with it. So I do think I think they're going to find more and more of these guys on the lower tier teams that make changes before the end of the season to stick with those guys versus just hiring a retread.
I think the big name teams, no. So like New York, LA, they'll always go with a splash and a name. Who else would you put in that basket? Those two probably for sure. Brooklyn's kind of doing it. Boston, yeah. Miami's got a chance to do interims. There's 3 or 4 teams that are like hell no. But for the most part, I agree. I think I just like it because you see him, and if you don't hire him, then there's alarm bells for that guy because you've seen something. So see how it goes.
No doubt.
All right, pro. We'll see how this game goes. New York making a bit of a run. It's a 10-point game. We'll talk about it next week.
All right, fellas. Hey, have a good one, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Just finishing on some NBL stuff. Now, the Bryce bombshell, we'll get into that in a second, but we'll just touch off some more minor names when we're talking about NBL movement. Matt Kenyon has signed with Adelaide. DJ Mitchell back to the NBL, signed with the Phoenix. Took a hiatus over in Europe for a season. Is classified as a local, so that's a pretty good pickup for Phoenix. Gorjak Gak re-signed with Phoenix, and Finn Delaney to Melbourne United, which is a very interesting pickup. A name that was kind of forgotten about in the NBL a little bit, then rumoured, and now Melbourne have got his signature. Tells me Jack White is probably not coming back from that Euro deal, even though it was just the end-of-season deal in Europe for Jack White. It tells me that he's probably not going to come back. And then Mitch McCann retires, so congratulations on a great career to Mitch. I mean, just ended up grinding out, being a good role player on different teams. I think he won 2 championships with United before he left, I think it was.
Might be only one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, one championship with them.
Was he there with the Jock Landale year in COVID? I think that was his last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then he signed with Adelaide?
I'll double check, sorry.
Might be wrong, but 1 or 2, regardless. Great career, was kind of the Delhi of the NBL for portions of his career, where he just was that kind of bulldog, did little things, guarded, got up and in, and then obviously body started to break down, bounced around a little bit in the NBL. I think he's probably just gotten over the fact that hasn't been able to stick the last couple of seasons anywhere, and finished it off in New Zealand on a poor result there. So congratulations to him. Be interesting to see what he does the next part of his life. But Bryce Cotton, I mean, the ultimate pump fake to the Perth Wildcats, first and foremost, which is absolutely hilarious. I love that. That's just great. But wasn't on anyone's radar. Wasn't on our radar as Sydney Kings. Wasn't on, everyone in the NBL, us included, thought, I thought he'd end up with Gleason over in Japan. I thought that was kind of smart money was saying that Gleason's doing everything he can to get him over there to play for him up there. Most NBL teams hadn't even bothered to reach out, but he's popped up and just randomly over the course of 48 hours of negotiations, according to Adelaide 36ers, they got his signature. Had word from the league that they are not involved in the deal, which is interesting. So they are not involved in any way where they can do ambassador agreements. I think that Montrezl Harrell was involved in some sort of ambassador agreement to top up his salary. Nothing of the sorts from the NBL as far as that goes. So Adelaide just absolutely opening the truck. I mean, you look at their roster, you'd probably guess Bryce between 1 and 1.5. It sits, I think, AUD. You look at that. Humphries is on $500,000. DJ's on 3 to 4. Now those two can be marquee, so they'll hit a lower threshold, which would probably be closer towards 250 and 3 for them respectively. Flynn Cameron, we were negotiating with, so we know that's a very, very big number. That's your salary cap. So you've got, between those four guys, you've got 1.678 region between four guys. They got to find the rest of their roster for those not aware, it's $2 million is the cap this coming season. They got to fill the rest of that roster. They're not going to fill it with 300,000. They're going to go over it. It's a matter of how much they go over. It's looking like it'll probably be $500,000 over, which is a big slap on luxury tax. But Adelaide's going all in again, and I know I give them shit. This is a great move for them. They signed the league MVP from multiple time league MVP to a team that has had turmoil, has not had any really positive news. They continue to put together big name rosters. They've now went and got one of the best players ever to play in the NBL. You got to give them credit to pull this off the way they've done it. They've gone out of their comfort zone. Obviously, it's going to hurt their salary cap, but man, I mean, the storylines you're going to get with this, and just the fact that everyone thought Bryce was gone. It didn't end well in Perth by all reports. Very, very sour towards the end of his career there in Perth. And to pop up not only in the NBL, but to their probably, I mean, they haven't really been a rival the last 10, 15 years, but historically, the biggest rivalry, they're one of the biggest rivalries in the league when they play each other. So makes for good viewing.
It's super interesting, and I think, man, the biggest question mark is whether or not, how all these guys gel. I think you look at what Bryce had to do to get Perth over the line and into the finals these last 2-3 seasons with some pretty good rosters around him. You look at, you've got 3 or 4, really good players there, but then you look at the depth chart and how they're going to be able to fill that with the limited money that they have. It's going to be, fingers crossed they're not a 6 seed or something again. I mean, you look at the roster they had last season, they were absolutely stacked with Kendrick Davis, runner-up in MVP, DJ, Isaac. You upgrade on KD and obviously a better player, but how much does that change the outlook of this team and how they perform during the regular season? They've lost key leaders in Jason Kidd and Sunday Detch and guys like that can kind of hold a team together and rally a team. So who's going to be the voice? How does it work? Is there enough ball for everybody? And then on the defensive end, are they going to be able to guard these better teams? So amazing move, great for the league, great story. That first game in Perth is going to be absolutely wild, but I've got a lot of question marks on how the experiment works and whether or not they'll be successful next season.
Yeah, defensively is going to be a bit of an issue, but I just think they'll try to run a really high tempo offense and try to really push the ball. Get up, play that 10-second style offense. I don't think they're can afford to go with a grind out, but there is a helter skelter there a little bit. Just Humphries is still going to want his touches inside. You've got Bryce, who's sorry DJ, but 80% of the usage is going to go to Bryce. You'd be stupid not to do that. Does not leave much ball for DJ and Humphries. Can DJ buy into a role? Can Humphries buy into a role? I mean, there's been numerous times on their team last season where there was frustration sitting in with touches and shot attempts and whatnot. So you got to kind of balance that out. They got to find probably a true point guard potentially. I don't see how you can play Bryce for stretches at the point. I mean, Rasmussen's there, and he really came into his own towards the end just as a role player. So maybe that's the Damian Martin, Mitch Norton next to Bryce. But I think they got to find something else there, and they just got to find some length on the wings to guard. You probably got to find a three man that can guard. that's going to be a big because they lost who's the name I'm looking for? The other kid that went to Perth, I think it was.
Marshall?
No, the backup. I think he's Sudanese as well. He was.
Lat Mayan. Sorry.
Where did he sign?
He went to Perth as well.
Yeah, he went to Perth. I thought he was pretty good for him. Just length and size, could play multiple positions. So they got a half 2/3 of a roster to fill with a limited budget. It's going to be interesting to see how they fill that in. But it's a good problem to have. You start with you got Bryce Cotton on your roster. It's a good problem to have. You figure all the rest out later, and that's what they've done. They've said, "Screw it. If we can get him, let's get him." Makes a splash. And then they already got a big fan base there. I think this is going to increase their ticket prices even more. And just like I said, the storyline the league needs. This is why my argument for trades, my argument for releasing salaries, like look how much traction this news got. This is probably their biggest news they've ever had in the off season, and it's created a lot of traction within NBL fans. I'd love to see more of that with trades and free agency and all that kind of stuff because it just creates momentum of its own. It doesn't have to be the NBL putting a clickbait article on Instagram to create debate. Who's better, this player or that? It just naturally happened. So I'd love to see more of it. But Adelaide's going to be interesting to see.
And this is a big domino to fall. I think this creates a lot of opportunity for other teams now to, try and match this move by the 36ers. This opens up a lot of cap room. Like, obviously, Perth already had that cap room with Bryce, publicly saying he was going to leave. But there's been links to Paddy. There's been linked to other big import guards. I think this leaves the door open for a United, for a Perth to make another big splash, and then it becomes very interesting in terms of the roster builds around the league as well as Adelaide.
Yeah, both quiet. Both those teams quiet on the big names. So something's going on
Cooking,
there.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially Melbourne. They haven't really gone out and replaced those imports yet. And they might wait till summer league. Perth the same. They re-signed Doolittle, but haven't really made a splash, and they've got a lot of cap space free now. So they're the two that you probably worry about. The Paddy rumours. I just don't think he goes to Perth. I don't. I think if he comes back, I know his family's based in the sunny coast. I think it'd be Brisbane would be the one that it's theirs to lose if he was to come back. Potentially Melbourne because of the whole fashion side of Paddy. Loves the limelight with that fashion stuff. So maybe Melbourne fits in better there. But that's if he wants to come back. There's been no confirmation. His wife's now pregnant, I believe. So do they want to have that child in the US? Then maybe he just tries to sign on a vet min somewhere else again. So I know historically Paddy had reservations about ever coming back to the NBL after the way things went when he played for the Melbourne Tigers back in 2012,
the lockout, I think, wasn't it?
Lockout year. He had made some comments that he'd never come play in the NBL from that point forward. So maybe he has a change of heart, but it will be interesting to see where he pops up. And just finally, just seeing the back page of the West Australian, Bryce Cotton, the Lion King, and then they made a nice little photo there with a Lion King backdrop. Interesting, just creates more fuel to the fight. It will be interesting to see how he's received by the Perth fans. I think it's going to be 50-50.
I think it's going to be all booze.
You think it's going to be all booze?
Oh, 100%.
Really?
They are the most ruthless fan base in the NBL. And I understand what he's done. But
they don't give a shit?
They don't give a shit. The way he went out and the way he did them, that's all gone. They don't care anymore. It's it's going to be ruthless. It's going to be absolutely ruthless.
Yeah, I think it'll be. Surely
you hope they do, respect. But I just
maybe he'll get a 1 game respect.
The tribute video might be
video, and that'll tame that game, and then the next games after that will just be a free for all.
It's going to be wild. It's going to be good TV, that's for sure.
Price of admission stuff. So if you can get to a Perth Adelaide game, either in Perth or Adelaide, both those fans are great, and they sell out the arenas. So both those games, I think the tickets will see a nice little increase. But absolute bombshell for the NBL. Well done, Adelaide. And as a rival team to now Adelaide and Bryce Cotton, of course, you'd rather not have Bryce in the league if possible, but I'd rather have him in. I think he, from a business model, from a star, from now an assistant who has to do the scout playing against him, love that challenge. Like absolute gun player, phenomenal, can turn a game on its head. Now I want to try to see how we can try to shake things up and try to stop him from doing it against the Sydney Kings. So I think it's great. and it's a price of admission guy. We need more of those.
100%. And you guys bring KD, and that KD Bryce rivalry was a big talking point last year, and that's not going to go anywhere.
Well, you just set fire to it.
So
we'll clip that.
KD's coming in with that matchup circled every time. So I mean, just the guard lineups in the NBL right now are probably the best they've ever been. And like I said, a few more dominoes yet to fall, but 100%, you'd much rather Bryce stay in the NBL than go to Japan or somewhere else.
100% great for the NBL. So I wonder if there's a bit of ownership involved in Bryce's deal. That's what I wonder.
It's hard to believe he goes there just for the same money when he had more money on the table overseas.
Yeah. Or Perth. I mean, from what I understand, he just kind of moved on mentally from Perth, but I think they had the same, if not more, than what Adelaide was offering. But I just wonder if there's a little thing that'll pop up when Bryce retires that he had 5% or whatever. That'd probably be the smart thing. But also, I think his wife's from Perth, so I don't know. Does he retire in Perth one day now with this going on? And probably plans have changed, I would assume. So, and that's life, right? Things change quickly, and dominoes change, and you got to adapt. But congrats to, like I said, I give shit to Adelaide at times, but man, you've pulled the wool over everyone's eyes, and the bombshell of the off season of the last 5 years, really. Great job.
Is this the biggest free agency move in NBL history? Is that a bit bold? I know the NBL were quick to grab that headline on their socials.
I think yes, and I think just because of the way it went down, like everyone had just circled him, like line through him.
Yeah.
He's in Japan or Europe.
Yeah,
maybe we see him back in the NBL one day. Not an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
And then just
out of nowhere.
No leak leading up to it.
Which is rare these days.
Yeah. Nothing like, hang on a second. Because usually the way it works in the NBL is if you're in negotiations, and it's kind of what happened with Delhi. Once those teams that were on his list were told by Delhi, or they had to feel like, shit, he's not coming here, they start leaking to journos, and then journos like, it's down to these two teams. Or we didn't even have that. So it's kind of like the Luka trade. Maybe they negotiated with no one else but Adelaide, right? Maybe they could have got more money on the open market. But I know Bryce is really diligent in particular on what he wants. There is a relationship with Wells, which I believe he was on the Summer League and Utah Jazz team up until they cut him after training camp. I think Wells was his assistant at the time, had a relationship there. So it all makes sense as to why Adelaide would work. And congratulations to Adelaide. So it will be interesting season so far. Interesting off season so far. We'll catch you all next week as New York tied with Indiana with 5.5 minutes. I'm going to go watch this game with Trent. We'll see how that goes, and we'll see you all next week.